Hello, today's video is different. I'm not gonna analyze a political situation, but rather I'm gonna tell you, as a Syrian of Armenian origins, what life looks like for a person like me, or looked like in Syria and especially in Aleppo. And before I begin, please ignore my hair because the biggest scientist in Germany, Angela Merkel, she decided that if we want to go to a barber, we need to have a negative negative test before trimming or cutting our hairs. So I was born on the 22nd of June 1987, 33 years ago, in Aleppo, from Armenian parents, and the grandparents of my parents are survivors of the Armenian Genocide, and they came from a city called Kilis in the southern part of Turkey nowadays. And other family members and relatives, some of them came from Gaziantep and others from Kharpert. And they arrived in Aleppo as refugees and found shelter in the city there. Some family members continued to Lebanon, others went to France, United States, etc. But my members or family members stayed in Aleppo. When I was writing my graduation project, the bachelor graduation project, actually I was trying to dig in a little bit and see the history of my family, and I found a person with the name also Kevork Almassian, and I really don't know if he is a direct relative of mine, but he was a priest and a father in one of the churches in Kharpert. And according to my investigation, he was burned alive with his, let's say, followers in the church during the Armenian Genocide. So, since the early ages of the Armenians of Syria, you've been taught the history of the Armenian Genocide and in every single detail, and also you hear a lot from your family and also from your grandparents about the Armenian Genocide. But part of it also in schools. So in Syria, in the kindergarten, elementary, secondary schools were all Armenian. And the curriculum of these schools are, of course, the official curriculum of the Syrian Arab Republic. However, we also used to study the Armenian language. And the argument of the government was, we allow the Armenians to teach Armenian in their schools because this is the language of their prayer. So because we go to churches and we pray in Armenian, therefore we need to understand what are we praying. The Armenian language is very important for the Armenians in the diaspora because after the genocide, the language is it's an indication of your heritage, culture, and existence. Therefore, most, if not all, Armenians in the diaspora, and especially in the Middle East, because their numbers are very few, they used to marry, or they still marry from an Armenian, between the Armenians. I mean, the Armenians marry Armenians, let's say. And I understand their argument because they have to preserve, as I mentioned, their culture, heritage, but also their existence and continuation. And maybe this could sound funny for some of you, but let's say if an Armenian man marries a non-Armenian woman, they tend to tell the woman that you need to learn Armenian because I want my kids to speak Armenian too. This is a little bit different when the woman is Armenian and the man is non-Armenian, because woman, she's the wife and she's the mother and she will raise the kids in all cases, so it won't be a big problem. Now, in Aleppo and in Syria in general, there were also, and myself, by the way, I was graduated from an Armenian kindergarten, from a secondary, also elementary and secondary Armenian schools. And after that, we also have Armenian sport clubs, for example, the Home and Men and Home and Men. And these both clubs, they had an existence they were active in Aleppo. And I still remember during my younger ages, like let's say when I was 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, Home Men was really strong, and they were competing on the 5th, 6th, sometimes 4th in the Syrian first league of basketball. The football was, let's say, the investment in football was a little bit less, and I myself, I was playing football in the Armenian club of Home Men, and I was a goalkeeper, actually. So I played from when I was 7 years old till 18 years old with the Armenian club of Home Men. And after that, because I had to study in university, so I moved in Damascus. The other thing that we also need to mention here is the Armenian political parties. Of course, in Syria, the political system in Syria, it doesn't allow political parties based on ethnic or, let's say, religious basis. So they were the Armenian political parties, especially the Armenian Revolutionary Federation and the Henchaks. They both had they were there, but they were working unofficially. Like, they weren't really in the mainstream. But there was an undeclared quota for the Armenians by the Syrian government in order for them to have a representative in the Syrian People's Assembly or the parliament. So we used to see minimum one MP, one Armenian MP in the parliament. And now in 2021, Armenians have 3 MPs, actually 2 from Aleppo and 1 from Damascus. In parallel to these political parties, there is this Armenian Orthodox Church and the Armenian Catholic Church and the Armenian Protestant Church, but the strongest one is the Orthodox one, and they have a say and they have an influence over the political party, which is the strongest party is Tashnaks, or the Armenian Revolutionary Federation. And when the Syrian government, for example, tells the Armenians that they have to choose an MP for them, this happens in negotiation or discussion between the Armenian Church and the Armenian Revolutionary Federation, or the Tashnaks, in order for them to choose their candidate for the elections. And before the elections, the government always puts the name of the Armenian candidates in a strong, let's say, lists in order for them to succeed in the elections. And that happened recently, as I mentioned, 3 MPs now in the Syrian People's Assembly. I want to say that the Armenians of Syria are very patriotic, and patriotic as an Armenian, but also very patriotic as Syrian. And if you ask, let's say, 100,000 Armenian Syrians or Syrian Armenians about their attachment and feelings towards Syria, this attachment is very strong. And this is, of course, partly because the Armenians are usually loyal to the countries that they received them and embraced them and also protected them for decades. And the Armenians have given a lot to Syria, and they brought with them a lot of skills into Syria. And the Syrians, seriously, I'm not joking now, Syrians love the Armenians. Like, they give their hearts for the Armenians. And I remember well how the Arabs, for example, they want to buy their necessary things from Armenians because they say the Armenians, they don't cheat and they don't manipulate and they don't sell you something that is fake, for example, product. And this happened a lot with my father. Like, my father was a second-class businessman. He used to sell spare parts for big trucks and buses, especially Mercedes and MAN, German products. And when someone comes, for example, from Deir ez-Zor, Hasake, Kamishli, and because they have big trucks for their agriculture, so my father, he wasn't rich, so he cannot really import from Germany, but he buys from the market and he sells it to them. And despite that, they used to come to us and tell my father, we know that your products are a little bit more expensive from the market, but we also know that you don't cheat. when you say this is a German product, that means German product. When you say this is a Chinese, that means that the Chinese. You don't, for example, put a Chinese product in a German car, for example, box and sell it as a German, because some other merchants did that and they made big fortunes thanks to that. Now, during this period, I remember that my father, when I was like below 18 years old, so I was really a teenager, and during the summer days, all of my friends were like either going to camping, parties, swimming pools, and just having fun during the summer, right? But my father was like, no, you're coming with me to work and you have to help me. And he knows that I can't help him in anything, but that wasn't the real purpose. He wanted me to interact with the other communities, the Arabs and other like other people who speak Arabic. Because as I mentioned, in our elementary, kindergarten and secondary school, these are Armenian schools, and although we study Arabic also, the curriculum is Arabic, but we don't have a direct interaction with the Arab people. So my father was like, no, you're coming with me to work, and then we had an employee that my father tells him, talk to him in Arabic. So I'm very fluent, let's say, in Arabic thanks to this experience, and also I have a very rich experience with the Arab people, and especially those who come from the eastern side of Syria. So this is part of it, why Armenians, as I mentioned, are patriotic, but also the government in Syria is, in my opinion, is very patriotic, and the educational system there plays a role. But also the political system that is not based on sectarian and ethnic lines, that also helps in creating let's say, a macro identity for the people. So you're Syrian. Yes, I'm Syrian of Armenian origins. Oh, you're Syrian of Greek origins. Oh, you're Syrian of Turkic origins. You're Syrian of Kurdish ethnicity. So that's how it worked. Unlike in Lebanon, for example, especially during the civil war and after the civil war, the political system there is based on sectarian lines. So the Armenians have their strict political parties, and the Sunnis have their political parties, Shiites have political parties, Kurds, name it, all of them. So there is no macro identity there that collects them. So the Armenians of Lebanon, they say, I'm Armenian and Lebanese. In Syria, they say, I'm Syrian of Armenian origins. They really consider themselves Syrians. So as I mentioned, so I had an interaction with the Arab people, and but not all Armenians had interaction with Arab people because, as I mentioned, they didn't go to market and work like I did. So their first interaction with other communities is after graduation from school, after your baccalaureate. So you go to university and start meeting people from different backgrounds and different ethnicities. So the guys here are just working in reconstruction since 7 a.m. in the morning. I'm sorry if you hear some noises. So this first direct interaction with the others for most Armenians starts from university days, and some goes to university, some go to work. So in all cases, you start meeting other people and try to understand them and socialize with them, let's say. In my experience, I studied at the University of Kalamun. It is in Rif Damascus, 80 kilometers north of the capital. And there, students from all around Syria used to study there, from Damascus, Homs, Hama, Aleppo, Deir ez-Zor, Hasaki, Kamishli, etc., etc. So I had a very rich experience with these students, and I'm very happy and grateful for that experience that I had with many of my friends, and most of them were Muslims. And we used to, for example, during Ramadan, fast together and play football together. I was also a goalkeeper in the university team. So it was really, really, really important for me to enrich my experience and my cultural, let's say, the richness of the Syrian culture. However, I want to finish this conversation with you with a little bit sad story that happens to me a lot recently, especially after 2011. Especially that those who chose to be against the Syrian government after 2011, unfortunately, so this is not about religion at all, because those who are with the government or against the government, they could be either Muslims or non-Muslims. So those who chose to be against the Syrian government, I don't know what really happened, but they were radicalized, and all of a sudden they were like, they start to tell me, so why do you talk about the Syrian politics? You're Armenian, go back to Armenia. Although maybe one of his grandparents were embracing my grandparents when they survived the Armenian Genocide. But there was a shift of identity, or an identity crisis that hit some Syrians, and they started to identify themselves as by Islamist lines instead of nationalist lines. Instead of saying I'm Syrian, no, I'm an Islamist, you know. So the Islamists really, they dislike the, let's say, the minorities, they dislike the Christians, they dislike the Armenians. So they were like, why the fuck you're talking about Syria? Why the fuck you're analyzing? Why the fuck you're really even there? Or how do you give yourself the right to talk as a Syrian? You were like, you're a refugee here, so go back to your own country. Although I was born and raised there and I have a Syrian nationality and I don't have an Armenian nationality, but so still they were telling me this. In 2015, I moved in Germany, and in 2019, the German mainstream media, they launched a media campaign against me because I'm pro-Assad. And they started to make stories about me that I may be sent by Assad here in Germany in order to push his strategy, etc., etc. And we know well that an important portion of the Syrian refugees who arrived in Germany are anti-Assad. So I started really to receive hundreds of messages, emails, calls to my mobile, WhatsApp. That's why I even closed my WhatsApp account. Telling me all sorts of racist comments about me just because I'm Armenian. And there is an opposition TV channel, two actually opposition channels. One is Orient TV and the other is Syria TV, but it's based in Turkey. And both are very pro-Muslim Brotherhood, very radical Islamist channels. And they made reportages about me. They really said you can't even imagine the amount of racism and hate in these reports. So, and thanks to these reports, also reportages, I received a lot of hate messages, death threats, just because I was born in an Armenian family. So, and I don't publish these emails or messages, of course, but I read them, and in order for me also to see what my opponents are thinking about me. And it doesn't stop there. Like if I go in the street here in Berlin, I am harassed, and some of them come and talk really bullshit with me, try to smear me, tell me we will do this to your mother, we will do this to your sister, da 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 da. And I was even attacked a few times here in Berlin physically. And one of the times 10 people even encircled me, and one of the times somebody started to run after me in the street. And all this also based on sectarian and ethnic hatred against me because I'm Armenian. I'm Syrian of Armenian origins. So despite all my very rich experience in Syria and my gratitude for everything that I received, but some Syrians that I mentioned, when they politically became active and very anti-Assad and pro-Turkey, pro-Erdogan, pro-Saudi Arabia, etc., etc., they have changed. So I just want to close this video with something that is very important for me to mention, because people tell me sometimes, and especially those anti-Assad people, that I should be ashamed of being with Assad because their grandparents embraced and protected my grandparents, and I should show gratitude and be with the Syrian people. But the thing is, they don't represent the Syrian people. They only represent a fraction of the Syrian people who want to have an Islamist state in Syria. This is one. Two, their grandparents who embraced, protected my grandparents, they were moderate people, they were humanitarian people, they were real Muslims. And they protected my grandparents based on this. But some of their grandchildren, unfortunately, they lost their national identity, their tolerance towards the minorities, and they have become more Turks than, for example, like they really worship Erdogan. So it's not me who is changed. I preserved my Syrian identity and also my rich Armenian identity. But these people who tell me to go back to Armenia, they're the ones who lost their identity. They have an identity crisis, and they are the ones who are now on the same camp with the new Ottomans, who are the grandchildren of the Ottomans who slaughtered my grandparents. So if some of them are watching my videos, this is my message for them. So to conclude, Joe Biden recognized the Armenian Genocide, and he used the term genocide in his recent speech on the 24th of April, 2021. I am researching about it, but I want to know your opinion, especially that the views of my channel mostly come from the United States. So guys, Biden recognized the genocide. What are the legal consequences, repercussions? What can the Armenians do in the United States? Can they go to American courts to claim territories, to claim properties, or to claim reparations, like Germany does with the victims of the Holocaust? So I want to know your opinion. I want to know if you know something about it, on a legal basis or political basis, and let me know in the comments below. And if you're new, please consider subscribing. It really helps me when you subscribe, and make sure, just check if you're subscribed, if you're watching, because YouTube is really deleting some of my subscribers. And hit the like, share it with your friends, and if you want to support my channel financially, you can become a patron. You can see the link in the description below. It will only cost you $2 per month, but it really helps me to continue, survive, and bring to you more videos and further information about Syria and the global affairs. And see you next time.